Dressed in disguises when they hunted on foot. Number 2, in the winter months they would use snowshoes to travel across the deep snow and would pursue the buffalo in deep snow to bog them down for easy kills. 3, when the hunters gained access to horses, the buffalo would be run hard to get their blood pumping, allowing the animal to bleed more profusely when shot, causing earlier death. And also on foot and with horses, if it was convenient, these Plains Indians would run them off of high cliffs and kill many at a time as they fell off the cliff. So that's some of the strategies that the hunter used. Okay? Very good, Siobhan. Let's talk about the role of warrior. See what the differences are in these things I've talked about. Cheryl's not dumb. She got it figured out on the vertical or horizontal tip. So, okay, how about the bow used by the Plains Indian warrior? Any different than the hunting bow? Would you think? No, same thing. Made from hardwood such as oak, formed in the shape of the new moon. So that there's no difference between a hunter's bow and a warrior's bow. How about the arrows? Were they made of willow? Yes, they were. But they only had 2 feathers instead of 3 because they weren't interested in accuracy. They were interested in what? Volume. Okay? Difference between shooting a single shot gun in the Civil War and an AR-15. Do you have to really aim very much with an AR-15? No, because you're going to put about 10 rounds out in about a second and a half. Same philosophy with the arrows. As fast as they could get them. They weren't interested. And they flew faster with 2 feathers rather than 3. But the accuracy wasn't as good, but they didn't care because they were multi-shooting. Okay? You don't multi-shoot at animals. Okay? They didn't mind wasting an arrow or 2 on food, or on enemy, but they didn't want to do that in food. They wanted to take their time and be accurate. So the arrows are made of willow, but they were designed with 2 feathers, which made it easier to fire at a rapid rate because those arrows flew faster and reached the target more rapidly. Now, the arrowheads were exactly the same. They were originally stone, but once they got their hands onto metal from barrel hoops, they started transforming those warrior arrows into metal as well. Arrow length, exactly the same. Elbow to the tip of a finger plus a hand. And as Cherith figured out, the 2-feather arrow tip was horizontal because a person stands up and their ribs go this way, right? Okay, so. Now, the average Plains Indian warrior, when he went into battle, was equipped with a bow, about 100 arrows, a bison hide shield, and what else, JC? You said it. I thought you said it. You said the S word, spear? Did you say spear? Oh yeah, I thought you said spear. Okay, so the average Plains Indian warrior was equipped with a bow, 100 arrows, a bison hide shield, and a long spear. Now, what came into Indians' hands later? Guns. But don't fool yourself, even with the introduction of guns, many Plains Indian warriors still used the bow and arrow, the bison hide shield, the spear, etc. Because it's traditional and what they were used to. So even after the introduction of the gun, many Indian warriors still carried the conventional weapons into battle as well. Now, there were 2 ways that a Native American warrior could prove his worth to his tribe. 2 ways that a Native American warrior could prove his worth to the tribe. One was stealing enemy supplies and especially enemy horses. So one way that you could really prove your worth to the tribe was steal enemy supplies and horses. Wasn't always military or white people's horses and supplies. Before white man became an issue, they fought among each other tribes. Okay? The second way a Native American warrior could prove his worth to the tribe is to show bravery in the face of the enemy. Which Taylor knows is another name for what? Well, not yet, not counting it. Just coup. So, to show bravery in the face of the enemy was very important. very important way that a warrior could prove his worth to the tribe. And showing bravery in the face of the enemy was referred to as coup. Counting the number of times you did it became known as counting coup. So coup is to show bravery in the face of the enemy. Counting coup was how many times a warrior did that, because it was important for them to keep track. How do you count coup? They even had things like coup sticks, where if I was in a bloody battle with Bill, which is Pete, which I'm up to how many now? 4? 5 is a $20 bill. I already had to pay Schreiber. So how many got 4? So, I'm going to think before I say this. So Pete, if Pete and I are after it, and I'm just going to give him the old, oh, you think you're hot? Take my coup stick. You're going to shoot me? Well, boom, whap him on the head and get back safe. Oh, you're going to shoot an arrow at me? Bang, hit him in the face. Even go up and touch him, slap his face. You ever heard of Muhammad Ali? Yeah. Yeah, that's what he did. He used to come around there, boom, 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 and then back off. Okay? Counting coup is very, very important. And that was a big deal. Now, believe it or not, the bloodiest encounters with Native Americans usually occurred when you had a battle within tribes and the enemy's chief was killed. So those are usually the bloodiest, most revengeful, ugly battles during these Plains Indians, is when a chief was killed. So the first intensive fighting on the part of Native Americans occurred between Indian tribes. They didn't always first start fighting white people, they fought each other. And the bloodiest encounters between those tribes usually occurred after a chief was killed. And in these battles, and later they used the same practice when they fought against the American military, the dead were often scalped and mutilated beyond recognition. Okay? So, in these very bloody, intense battles between Indian tribes and later with the American military, the dead were often scalped and mutilated beyond recognition. Now, why did they mutilate somebody beyond recognition? Anybody know? Well, that's a good guess, but not right. Yes. This gal's on fire here. What? Right, they believed in the afterlife. They believed in reincarnation. And so if I battled Taylor and I cut off her right arm after, and that was pretty common, dismemberment, if I cut off her arms, when she rose from the dead and reincarnated, the next time I fought her, she'd be standing there with no arms, which would make her an easier target. So that's why they did this. Indians' religion believed in the afterlife. They believed they might meet their enemies in the afterlife, and they wanted to put them at a disadvantage, and that's why they mutilated and dismembered the dead. Kind of crazy, but true. We're not going to talk about the Battle of Bighorn, Custer's last stand, so to speak, but some of those guys were just mutilated beyond belief. Tom Custer, the only way they could identify him afterwards was a tattoo that he had on his shoulder that had his initials. Otherwise, they'd have never known who he was. They smashed his skull as flat as a pancake. I mean, this guy it was bad. Okay? Now, before going into battle with either rival Indian tribes or white military, the Plains Indians often looked to religion for strength. And they would look to the Great Spirit for guidance. They looked to the Great Spirit. What was the Great Spirit? It was the Native Americans' what? God. And they would look to the Great Spirit, or the Indian God, for direction. Anybody know what direction they would normally get? What they called the direction? Indians normally would look to the Great Spirit. They'd use things like peyote. You know what peyote is? Well, it's a strong weed, I guess, yeah. It's a drug kind of, peyote. Before it was known as a drug. But it was a drug that would give you hallucinations. Kind of the poor man's LSD. We'll get into that next year. But anyway, they would have a vision or a what? A dream. And during these dreams, they often would believe that was what was going to happen in battle. Sitting Bull had a vision or a dream prior to the Battle of the Little Bighorn in which he saw soldiers hanging upside down. And he even took and drew that on the back of a buffalo hide. That his vision was that soldiers would be falling upside down, which predicted a great victory in the Battle of Little Bighorn prior to the battle. That was the type of thing that went on. So the vision was a dream of what was going to be the upcoming encounters of both rival tribes and the white man, usually stimulated by the use of peyote. Okay, that type of thing. Okay? All right. We'll move on to get a little start on our next subtopic because this becomes the Native American concern, and that's settlers moving westward and the Fort Laramie Treaty. Okay? Settlers moving westward and the Fort Laramie Treaty. Now, we talked about settlers moving west, right? And they were bothering two very sacred areas of land by the Plains Indians. So as they're moving westward, these white settlers, they are violating two specific areas of land that were considered very sacred to the Plains Indians. Anybody want to guess what one of them might be? Their burial grounds, their spiritual areas where they buried their dead. How did Indians normally bury their dead? They put them up kind of like on a scaffolding, so to speak. And they certainly did not want white settlers coming through those sacred burial grounds on their way west, disturbing the spirit of their dead. So your sacred burial grounds was one area. What would be another area you wouldn't think they would want white settlers trampling through? Their prime hunting grounds. Very good. Nolan is on fire today. Prime hunting grounds. So, it's no different than anybody else. Would you want somebody stomping on your grandfather's grave and being disrespectful at the cemetery? No, you certainly would not. Would you want somebody, as you've got your tree stand, Delaney, set up in this prime area, some guy just deciding, hell, that's a good tree stand, I'm going to get in that, shoot my deer there. Yeah, there we go. And that's what the kind of the philosophy was. So those two areas are very sacred. Well, by the 1850s, more and more and more and more white settlers were traveling west across the Great Plains, moving westward. Well, obviously, when they were moving westward to areas such as Oregon and California and Utah, they traveled through prime hunting grounds and Indian spiritual places. Didn't go over very well. So whether settlers were going to Oregon to settle the Oregon Territory, or California for the gold, or to Utah where Brigham Young went through, they often traveled through prime hunting grounds and Indian spiritual areas. Lots of times you think those people had any idea they were doing that? So they probably weren't really being disrespectful, they were just intruding. Okay? Well, this movement of the white man westward threatened the Plains Indians' way of life. And when their way of life was threatened, they began to resist the movement of white settlers westward. And not in a very nice way, because they were either harassing continually or attacking settlers moving west to the point that who had to step in? First off, though, the federal government, who then had the military solve the problem. But when these white settlers began being raped, pillaged, and killed, so to speak, as they moved westward, it got to the point that the federal government had to intercede and get this under control. And the first way they tried to do it wasn't by military force, but by negotiation or treaty. So in 1851, a treaty was negotiated with 8 different Plains Indian tribes, including the famous Sioux tribe. So in 1851, to try to solve this problem of actions against settlers moving westward, a treaty was negotiated with 8 different Plains Indian tribes, including the Sioux. What was the name of that treaty? The Fort Laramie Treaty. And we'll end today by telling you the ingredients of that agreement. What was the Fort Laramie Treaty? Well, in a treaty, I give you something and you give me something in return, right? Well, what the Native Americans got was one thing. $50,000 a year. So what the Native Americans got as a result of the Fort Laramie Treaty was $50,000 a year. And what did the federal government get in return for that $50,000 a year? Two things. Number one, the safety of settlers moving westward. Now, I want to see how good a thinkers were at the end of the day. What would be the second one that had to do with the safety of settlers traveling westward? How are we going to guarantee that? Okay, we'll take your word for it. They had to have protection by what? By building of forts. Very good. So the second thing the government got was permission from these tribes to build forts along these western trails like the Oregon Trail so they could monitor, not only give shelter to the people that needed a rest, maybe give them some food, but also give them protection. Fort Phil Kearny, which we'll talk about, which is by Sheridan, which we'll go visit, was exactly one of these types of forts that was built, one, to bring people in for rest and relaxation, two, to bring people in to feed them if they needed it, and three, to protect any violations of safe travel. Yes? That's okay. Fort Phil Kearny is a perfect example of that. So we'll talk about that later, but we'll end with that today, and then we'll tell you about how these Indian tribes, you think you can get 8 Indian tribes to agree to the same thing? No. And the ones that aren't going to agree very much are the Sioux. Okay? Very good.